Hello and welcome to part 6 of the cute little turtle tutorial series here on Blender Cookie. This is David Ward, and when last I left you, we had just finished setting up all the materials and getting all the textures set up and everything in cycles and kind of getting just a nice render through there. But since we're all done with that for the most part, let's go ahead and collapse the node editor window over here. We don't really need it right now. And tell you what, let me turn my screencast keys on. I always forget to do that, it seems. But since we have all the lights and everything set up for cycles, and we're pretty well done with that, let's go ahead and just turn those layers off. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and just click on those layers here on the layer selection. And then I'm going to go to our front view and tell you what, let's go ahead and hide the turtle shell for now. Just grab that and hit H. And we're going to start working on giving him a skeleton so we can pose him around and make him kind of, you know, posable. So first thing I want to do is put the 3D cursor right about where his belly button would be, but you know, since he's a turtle, he doesn't have a belly button, as the hatch from eggs and all that. So anyways, we're going to select all these vertices around his waist, Shift S, cursor to selected, so it puts it right there in the center of the selection, and therefore it's right there in the middle where it needs to be. So now we're going to Shift A, add an armature, and it's going to be single bone. Click, there we go. And it's added it, but we can't see it because it's inside his mesh. So if we go to Z, you can see it's there. One thing we can do to change its visibility is go to the Object tab over here and go to X-ray. And then I like to change the display type to wire. Not bounds, wire. There we go. And then if we go to our object data, I like to work with B-bones, and I'll show you why here once we get in here. But you can leave it on octahedral or stick or envelope or whatever you like. But like I said, I like to work with B-bones. So anyways, let's tab into edit mode and let's drag the top of that bone way down, and then let's drag that down to the waist area. So the top of it's there at the belly button. I'll tell you why once we get a little further along creating his spine and everything. So real quick, let's go ahead and extrude out from the top of that all the way up to, probably just hold down Shift so we get a nice straight line. There we go. So about right there, we'll go to our side view, and let's move that up to where it'd be about at the base of his skull. So probably about right there. And then we'll grab this, and we need to add some segments to it. So we're going to subdivide it a couple of times, once for the bottom of his neck, so that's one single bone there, and then one for here, so his chest is separated from the spine. So we'll have 2 segments, so we'll go W, subdivide, and change the number of cuts to 2. And actually we'll have 3 segments, just 2 cuts. So let's move this one down here to where it's more at the base of his rib cage, and then this one to where it's at the top of his shoulders and the base of the neck. So there we go. Now, one thing we can do with B-bones, visually, it doesn't change their functionality, but visually it'll make it look a little more appealing. We can grab them and go Shift-Alt-S, actually Control-Alt-S, and it'll make them skinnier and fatter. So we'll just make the neck a little skinnier and the waist, or the spine area a little skinnier, so we can kind of see a nice difference between them. And tell you what, let's go ahead and rename those as we're going. Let's grab this one, and we'll name this one Main Hip. I'm put the main on front of it because I'm going to duplicate it here shortly, and I'll show you why again. But for now, we'll just name it Main Hip. Then this guy, oops, there we go. That'll be the spine, and then this will be the chest or rib cage. I'll just call it chest, and then obviously the neck. Okay, and you know, while we're at it, let's just go into side view and let's go and extrude out one more time there at the top of the neck, and this will obviously be the head. And we'll just make that a little fatter. Control-Alt-S. Now, like I said, Control-Alt-S makes them a little fatter or bigger, but say you want to add even more visual appeal to them. And the way we do that is we just choose what axis we want to expand on. So for example, I want to grab the chest. I want to make it a little bit wider, but I don't want to make it any thicker. So I'm going to go Control-Alt-S, and obviously that makes it skinnier or fatter, but I'm going to hit X, and that just makes it on that one axis. So there we go. And we'll do the same thing down here on the hips. Let's make them a little smaller, and then we'll do it again, make them a little bit wider. So there we go. And the same thing on the head. Let's make it a little thicker this time, like so. Okay, so we'll tab into edit mode. If I click on the right spot, there we go. Got a different mouse. It's thought it'd be a little less, you know, wily, but It's not quite as precise, I don't think. Anyways, one thing I want to do real quick while we're at it is grab the neck, and let's go to our bone settings here. Scroll down here and expand the deform, and let's give it some more segments. Right now it's just one single bone, which it'll still be one single bone, but if we give it more segments, it'll curve a lot more nicely. So let's give it 4 segments, and then we'll do the same thing down here on the spine. Let's give it 3 segments. And one thing you'll notice is it kind of twisted around. And you're thinking, why did it do that, Dave? Well, let me tell you. It did that because if we turn on the axes view here in the Object Data tab, axes right there, you can see that the Z-axis of this particular bone is pointing towards the back. And it's the same thing on the rib cage and the neck and also the head. So right now, the hip bone is the one that's incorrect. So if we go Control-Alt-R, or not Control-Alt-R, just, let's see, Control-R to rotate it, or oops, grab the right bone first, Control-R to rotate it, we can rotate it around like so, but we may not get it perfectly accurate. So one easy way is just go Control-R, 180 on your numpad, and that rotates it 180 degrees. So in the 360 degree circle, that's halfway around. So now you'll notice the Z-axis is pointing towards the back uniformly with all of the rest of the bones. So if we tab back into edit mode, the twist on the spine is now gone. So we can go ahead and turn off axes for now just to get them out of the way. And like I mentioned before, the reason I grabbed the hip and brought it down to where the top of it was at the belly button area is because right now when we rotate it, it rotates around the bottom. And that's not really, you know, the way it should do. It should rotate around the top of the hips. So, tell you what, let's do. Let's tab into edit mode. And we're going to scale that down a little bit. And let's actually rename this to, let's see, I don't know, control hip. There we go. And now we're going to Shift D to duplicate it. And Control Alt S to make it a little bit bigger. And this one we'll call main hip. Okay? Now, one thing I want to do is hit W, and I'm going to switch its direction. So now, when I rotate it, it rotates around there, whereas this one still rotates around the bottom. But I want this one to follow this one, so what I'm going to do is grab that guy and Shift select that guy, Control P, and we're going to make it the parent and keep the offset. So now when I tab back out and I rotate this guy, it rotates everything. So there we go. Now, the chest area doesn't always rotate along with the body. Like when you're walking, for example, your hips might be swaying a little bit, but your chest is usually pretty straight. So let's go over here to our bone settings and say inherit rotation, uncheck. So now when we rotate that, you can see, there we go. And you can do a belly dance or something, and his chest will stay put. So anyways, there we go. Now, let's go ahead and start working on the arms and legs. So we'll tab back into edit mode, put our 3D cursor about where the shoulder should be, and come over here and let's put it back right there, and about right there. Tell you what, let's grab their model here and just select a loop around the shoulder and Shift S, cursor to selected, and it'll put it right about where we need to. Okay. Now grab the rig again, tab into edit mode, go ahead and Shift A, and it adds a bone all the way up there. So let's just grab the end of it and drag it down to about where the fingers start. And then we'll grab that and subdivide it. We need to do 1, and we'll go ahead and subdivide it twice. So we have a hand, a forearm, and a upper arm. So we'll go tab, or W actually, subdivide, and give it 2 cuts, just like we did with the spine. And this guy looks like it's pretty well where it should be. Just drag it down a little bit. And then this guy needs to come up some, about right there. Let's go to our top view and kind of get these lined up a little bit better. Maybe bring that one forward a bit, that one a little bit further back. Oops. A little bit back. There we go. And then this one about like so. Drag that one up. Okay, now let's kind of do like we did on the spine and the neck. Grab that guy, Control Alt S, make them a little bit smaller, and then maybe make this the forearm and hand maybe a little wider. So we'll just on this Y-axis. Sometimes you have to hit the, like, if I hit Y just the first time, it's going to scale it along the global Y-axis, but if I hit it twice, it'll do it along the object's Y-axis. So since it's rotated around, it'll be a little bit different. So we go Control-Alt-S to scale it a little thicker, but I just want it on the Y. The first time, it does it on the global, the whole scene, and if I hit it twice, it does it on the objects itself. You'll notice the things over here are kind of acting weird. I'm not sure exactly why they do that, but it's nothing to worry about. So anyways, so we got our upper arm. Let's go ahead and rename that to upper arm. Okay, oops, upper arm. There we go. And then this guy, forearm. Actually, I need to tell it, I need to designate left and right. So we'll say upper arm.L, because it's on the character's left side. Forearm.L. And then hand.L. Okay? And let's go ahead and give him some fingers. We'll go ahead and grab the model there. Shift select one of the loops around the first finger. Shift S, cursor to selected, tab back out, grab our rig, tab into edit mode. Shift A to add a bone. It's going to grab it way up there. So let's drag it down and fit it to the tip of the finger. And I tell you what, let's grab the base of the finger and bring it a little bit further back. Because these fingers are going to be a little bit different than normal. Their bend is going to start a little bit further into the hand, whereas most fingers start at the base of the finger. This is going to be, it's cartoony, so it's going to be a little more smooth. So let's grab that, make him a little skinnier. Then we'll Shift D, duplicate that, drag it down. This is going to be the other finger. Would call it the pinky, but I don't know. I guess that'd be the index finger, and this would be the pinky in a three-finger hand. Okay, so we'll Shift D, duplicate that, rotate it around towards the thumb area. And we'll go to side view, get the top of that lined up. Actually, the whole thing needs to be drugged down some. There we go. And let's go to our top view. And I think the fingers are pretty good. Let's go ahead and drag the base of them a little further back, like so. Okay. And one other thing I want to do with these fingers is I kind of want those to be more curvy than just a solid bone. So they're going to be kind of rubbery looking when they bend. So the only way I can do that is if these have multiple segments, kind of like the spine and everything. But the thing is, with the segments, they don't act smoothly unless they sort of have a base to work off of. So what I want to do is grab each one of these guys and go ahead and subdivide them once. Subdivide. And then we'll grab the middle part and just drag it down to where it's kind of just a little bit, just something to have a base there. And we'll grab the middle part there, drag that down, and then drag the thumb ones down as well. You can actually grab the thumb and drag it back a little further. Okay, now let me show you why I did that. We'll grab each individual finger now and give it some multiple segments. We'll say 3 segments apiece. Okay, and now we'll tab out, and if I rotate these guys, so grab the rotate gizmo there and say normal, we'll rotate like so. You can see now it's got a nice smooth bend to it from the base. But for example, if I deleted the base and the finger was just by itself, we rotate it, it just rotates all by itself. The base helps the segments be stuck to something, if that makes sense. So we'll tab in here, Control Z, and add that back in there. So let's make sure everything's cleared out of the rotation. And let's go ahead and start naming these. We'll call this one, we'll say index base.L. I guess we can put a F at the beginning. F capital index, just so we can tell it's the finger index. I'm sure nothing else is going to be named index, but just for uniformity's sake, everything's else named a little more descriptive. So we'll say finger index.L. This is just the finger itself, so just the index finger.L. And then this guy is going to be finger, we'll say pinky.L. Actually, I need to put the base.L. F pinky base.L. Make sure I'm uniform index base. Yes, okay. And this one's F pinky.L. Okay, same thing on the thumb. F thumb base.capital L. And then F thumb.L. Okay. So now we have the fingers that rotate smoothly. And I also want the wrist to do that as well. So, tell you what, we're going to get into inverse kinematics on these arms and legs. So I want to duplicate the hand bone and kind of do like we did on the waist. Just make a kind of a placeholder, and then we'll make the one that actually controls. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, scale that one down a little bit, and we're going to Shift D to duplicate it. And you can see it, if we scroll up to where its name is, where's its name? Well, where did it? I guess if we tab out, the name will be a little more visible. Where did it hide it? Well, it's embarrassing. Item. There we go. Hiding it from me. I must have collapsed that by accident. So anyways, let's rename this one to ikhand.l. So we'll know that it's going to be the controller. So we'll tab into edit mode and Control-Alt-S, make that a little bit bigger. And then we want this one to be separated from the wrist bone, or from the forearm bone. Right now it's attached. And the inverse kinematics won't work on it because it'll create a dependency loop, which, you know, is like a time paradox. It just screws everything up. So let's come over here to our relations over here and just go ahead and delete out the forearm bone, and so it doesn't have a parent at all. Okay, now we'll tab out and move it around. You see it's not connected to anything, but the original hand is still connected to the wrist, the forearm. So I want the original hand to follow everything that the IK hand does. So I'm going to select the IK hand first, shift select the hand bone, and go Control Shift C, and it's going to bring up the Add Constraint menu. And we want it to copy the rotation. So every time I rotate the IK hand around, the actual hand will follow. And that is handy because now I'm going to add an IK chain, inverse kinematics chain, to the forearm. And it's going to follow this IK hand. So IK hand is selected, shift select the forearm, and go Shift I, and it's going to add IK to active bone. Boom, there we go. Now we'll select the forearm bone, go to our constraints, and give it a chain length of 2. So it's going to start at the base of the wrist, the end of the bone, and go up one bone, which will be the end of itself, all the way up to the end of the shoulder or the upper arm bone. So now when I move the target bone, the IK hand that the forearm is pointing at, you can see it moves nicely along with it. And since the hand bone is connected, if I add segments to it, go to our bone select, or our actual just the bone object, and give it a couple of segments, you can see it kind of twists around. We'll do the same thing on the forearm itself, twist it around. So now it'll be a nice smooth, cartoonish, rubbery kind of type of look. So let's go ahead and Alt-R, Alt-G to clear out the location and rotation. And one thing, obviously, that we need to do is parent each finger to the hand. So we'll grab the base of each of these 3 fingers, all 3, and then lastly, shift select the hand and go Control P. I want to make sure you say keep offset. So now, all of these fingers are following the hand bone, which in turn is following the IK bone. So therefore, when we move it around, they all move together. And then you can rotate each finger, and it'll be nice and smooth. Okay, so there we go. Let's clear out all the locations and rotations. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and save this guy. And we're going to kind of do a similar thing on the feet, but we don't really need to have these twisting things because he's not going to be really rubberizing. You know, his feet are going to be pretty solid. So we'll just tab into edit mode here, put our 3D cursor right there at the top of the thigh, about right there. For some reason, Blender is acting different than it used to. In previous times, you could set the 3D cursor here, like I have, and then we'll come over here and move it, and it should stay put on this axis. But for some reason, it likes to pop it around. So, anyways, what we can do is just grab the bone, like we did on the shoulder and everything. Just select where you want it to go. Shift S, cursor to selected, and it'll put it right where it should go. Okay. So just an extra step, no big deal. Now we'll go Shift A after we've tabbed into edit mode of the armature and add another bone. And when you add a bone, the tip of it's automatically selected, so you can just move it down. We'll move it down to the bottom of where the foot would go. Then grab the leg itself and kind of do like we did on the spine and the arm. Just give it a couple of subdivisions. We need one here for the knee and then one here for the ankle. So we need to cut it 2 times W, subdivide, number of cuts, 2. And we'll just move these into place, about where they should go. And then same thing here, make that smaller like we did on the upper arm, and maybe make the foot a little bit bigger. We'll tab into edit mode here, move that forward, and then move the whole foot forward as well. And we can make this a little bit bigger on the y-axis there. Okay. So now, let's see. I guess we can add a little bit of rubberiness to the ankle area. So let's do this like we did on the hand and the IK hand. We'll just grab the foot itself and maybe make it a little bit skinnier. Then Control Shift D to duplicate it, and then Control Alt S and make it a little bit bigger. And then come over here and delete its parent there. And one important thing, if you have say you have a parent in here and you just delete it out and you hit the enter button on your normal keyboard, okay, well, never mind. And again, in times past, if you hit the normal enter button on your standard QWERTY keyboard, it didn't clear it out. You had to use the enter button on your numpad, but I guess they've changed that. So anyways, no worries. So now let's go ahead and rename these. This is going to be, grab that guy, it's going to be thigh .l, oops, .l, there we are. And this will be, we'll call it shin.l, and then the small one will just be the typical foot.l, and then the big one there will be the IK foot.l. Okay, and now we'll do, like I said, on the hand, select the IK foot, shift select the IK, or the actual foot, and go Control Shift C, oops, yeah, Control Shift C, huh. Oh, okay, right. We have to be in pose mode for this to work. So, that one, Control Shift C. There we go, copy rotation. So now when I rotate the IK controller, the foot rotates accordingly. So we'll go ahead and do like we did on the hand, give it a couple of segments there. Same thing on the shin, a couple of segments. And then we'll grab the IK foot, shift select the shin bone, and go Shift I to add an IK constraint. Boom. Same thing we did on the forearm. Just give it 2 chain lengths. So now when we move the foot around, everything follows suit. Now, one thing that might cause problems is, like as you can see, the shin is attached to the thigh bone, and so its curviness, which we really only want on the ankle area, but it's falling up into the knee area, so we don't want that. So what we can do is, under the bone settings, it has, on the curve segments, it has an easing in and an easing out. And right now it's set to 1 on each of them. So if we set the ease in to 0, you can see now we have a nice sharp angle right there at the knee, but yet the ankle is still going to curve around. So that's what we want. And we can go ahead and do the same thing up here on the arm. Let's go ahead and give it a 0 ease in. So now when I rotate the wrist around, it bends nicely, rubbery at the wrist, but the elbow is still nice and sharp. Okay, so we're pretty well set with the general rig. There's a couple of other things we need to do. I like to add a base for everything, so I can control, like if I have a walk cycle or something, I can control where the whole thing moves. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, Shift A, and it's going to add a bone right there in the middle. And we'll just move that back to where it's kind of centered up, and then grab the top of it, drag it way down to where it's really small, and then we'll zoom in here so we can see what we're doing. Grab that, maybe move it up just a little bit so it's even with the bottom of his feet. Now we're going to Control Alt S and just make it really big, so it's kind of like a platform that he's standing on. And we'll call this one main. That'll be the main bone that controls everything. So all the bones that are kind of just out there floating in nowhere, like the IK hand and the IK foot, and you could say the hip bone, because it's kind of controlling all the other parts of the body, we're going to attach those to the main. So we'll grab the hip, shift select the IK hand, shift select the IK foot, and finally, lastly, shift select the main bone, and we'll go Control P and make sure you say keep offset. So now we tab out, we move that around, you can see it moves everything. However, the upper arm and the thigh are not connected to anything right now, so they're kind of just staying put. So what we need to do is tab into edit mode, grab the upper arm, shift select the chest, that's where we want to connect it to, keep the offset, same thing with the thigh, shift select the hips, and Control P, keep the offset. So now when we tab out, you can see everything rotates around. Now, the one problem with this is, as you can see, the chest isn't rotating around at all. And that's because we told it to not inherit any rotations. So when we move the hips around, the chest kind of just stays put as far as rotating goes. It still moves back and forth, and it translates, it moves around, but it doesn't rotate. So one thing we can do to make it, to have a controller to control everything, even the rotation of the bone on the chest, is to just create an empty. So we'll just create an empty. Actually, we have to select mesh before we do that, because right then it was in pose mode, and you can't really add anything to the scene in pose mode. So we'll Shift A and add an empty, and I like to add a sphere for this particular thing. And we'll go over to our object data and change the size. Let's make it 0.5. So this will be our controller, overall controller for our little turtle and his rig. So the way we get that to work is we grab our armature and just go to object mode, and then we will shift select the empty and go Control P and parent that to the object. So now when we rotate the empty around, it controls everything. Even if our rig is in pose mode, that still controls everything. So you can scale it down, make it, if you put it in a scene where it's not quite the right size, you can just scale that main controller down and it'll control everything. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and rename that empty to main. Actually, just go to the front, say turtle underscore. I like to have everything as one long word with underscores and dashes if need. Control. So turtle underscore main underscore control. So that will control everything with the turtle and his rig. Once we have everything completed, that is. So, I know what you're thinking, Dave. We only have the left side done. We need to have the right side done too. Well, okay. We'll get in there and we'll do that. So let's select just one of the center bones there. I'll just grab the hip. And we'll say cursor to selected. So it centers the cursor up on the whole object, the whole kit and caboodle. And we'll select the whole left arm and the whole left leg. And we got to make sure we don't select any of the other bones in the middle. There we go. And we're going to hit the period button. So we're rotating around the 3D cursor, which, as we said, is right there in the middle of the scene. And we're going to Shift D to duplicate. And everything has now been duplicated. If we move it around, you can see it. And we're going to SX to scale it on the x-axis -1 times. So we'll scale on the x-axis -1, so it kind of gives it a mirror. You could do the same thing by just going armature mirror right there on the X global, and it'll do the same thing, but I like to scale it on the x-axis. Anyways, so that scales it over there, but you can see that some of the rotations are off. So what we need to do is make sure in your window over here you say mirror editing is turned on, and now we're going to go select inverse and just hit Control R. Okay, before we do that, back up. Go ahead and select inverse yet again. And we need to tell it, right now, say if we just select one, you can see it's still got the naming convention, forearm.L, but it's instead of being on the right side, so it should be .R, it just put it .001. So there's a trick we can do to rename all of these bones at once without having to go in there and manually do it. So we'll just undo, so we have those selected again. And just go to armature, flip names. So now if we select that one, you can see it's .R instead of .L.001. So go ahead and undo again, so we have those selected. And now we'll select inverse, so we have the originals. And now if we hit Control R, since we have the x-axis mirror turned on. I don't know what I had selected before, but anyways, if we hit Control R, you can see that those rotation of these bones pop right into place to where they're the exact opposite of these originals. So we tab out now, and we grab the IK hand and just move it in Control comma, so we're rotating around the 3D cursor, or rotating around the center of the selection rather than the 3D cursor. Rotate that around, drag it down, say he's just got his hands hanging at his side gently. You can copy right here, copy, and then paste the opposite. So now he's got his arms at his side. And then if you want to rotate the whole thing, you can do so. So anyways, let's undo all the posing we just did, and we'll go ahead and apply this rig to our mesh here. So we'll select our mesh, shift select just any of the bones. and go Control P, and we're going to say Armature Deform, and we'll say with automatic weights. So there we go. So now when we move, you can see that the turtle's mesh follows along with it. And it gives a nice curvature around those joints. Now, one thing you might notice is, let's put our rig on its own layer. So just go to Object Mode there and say M, and I like to put it on the bottom left, right there. So it disappeared because I guess the mesh himself was also selected, so we'll go ahead and move him back to the first layer. Okay, but let's go to the first layer. And now, like I said, one thing you might notice is some ugliness right here at the top of the forearm. And the one way we can fix that is if we grab our armature again, go back, go into Edit Mode, and the forearm is connected to the upper arm. But it should be parented, but it doesn't have to be connected for it to still work. So what we can say is disconnect, and it's still parented to it, but it's not connected to it. So if we tab back out, you can see that will assist in, if we go to pose mode, that will assist in some of that ugly rotations not showing up. It still shows up a little bit, but once we turn on if I grab the mesh, there we go. Once we turn on the subdivision surface, okay, it's turned on. I'm going to get rid of the multi-res, don't really need that. If we go to 2 views, it's still there. We can play with the segments. Maybe that'll help some. Add a bunch. It won't be quite as visible. Or you can just turn it off altogether. But then you won't have the nice rubberiness of the wrist. So we'll just, oops, wrong bone. Select the right one. There we go. What is going on here? Deselect. Okay, anyways. So just give it a couple of segments. I guess we'll have to give it a lot if we want it to be nice and smooth. So just give it 16. We'll do the same thing on this guy. Say 16. And we'll go ahead and tab into Edit Mode and go ahead and disconnect him. Okay. So we'll copy this hand over here. I just selected it. I didn't hit G or anything. That's weird. Copy and then paste. Okay, so now I'll hide the rig and you can kind of see it's not as ugly anymore. So if we go ahead and render, I'll go ahead and pause recording while that renders, so I'll be right back. And obviously, here it is rendering. The light, the layer that has all the lights and everything is turned off. So let's go ahead and escape out of the render. Shift select the layer that has. I need a new keyboard and mouse. Apparently, they're not behaving the way they should. Okay, and then the shell is hidden, so it's Alt H. Now, if we render, it should look a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and pause recording yet again, so we don't have to sit here and wait for it. Okay, it's still rendering, but you can see the turtle himself has been rendered, and it looks quite a bit better when he's standing in a pose rather than just with the arms out and everything. But okay, so let's go ahead and escape out of there. And there's a couple more things I want to do before I call this rigging section done. Go ahead, escape out. There we go. Let's go ahead and turn him back to one subdivision view. Okay. So let's turn the layer that has the rig back on there. And on our object data, let's go ahead and go to another layer right there. And that's where I like to add the facial controllers. And so we're going to add some controllers here to just be able to give him some basic expressions. We'll add like a smile and everything. We'll go in and add shape keys, but for now, let's go ahead and get the controller bones set up for that. So we'll tab into Edit Mode. And you can see that we're in Edit Mode even though we can't see anything. We're going to Shift A to add a bone, and it adds it where the 3D cursor is. So let's scale it down and move it over to, this will be his chin. We'll scale it down and put it right there on his chin. So like so. And then let's go ahead and name it. We'll say FC for caps lock. FC for facial controls, and we'll say chin. And then since we're in front view, let's go and Shift D to duplicate it over here. And this will be FC mouth.L. So this will be the mouth controller on the left side. And then don't want to get too crazy with all the controls. So let's add for his eyelids. Let's select the eyeball itself. And we're going to go Shift Shift S to put our 3D cursor to selected right there. And then we'll grab a bone again, tab into edit mode, and Shift A. Shift A, there we go. Drag that down on the Z axis to where it's at the top of the eyelid. GZ, there we go. And we'll go ahead and Shift D, duplicate that, and then hit period on our numpad so it's rotating around the 3D cursor, and hit R180 so it rotates it around 180 degrees. And now we can kind of grab each points of these and just move them, or grab the top one, I guess, and move it, and then the bottom one. Okay, so this is going to be lid top.L, and this will be lid bottom.L. Okay, and we'll go and grab these and make those a little skinnier. Let's go ahead and turn the layer off that has the lights and everything on it again. Tab in edit mode, Control Alt S, scale it down on the on its Y axis. If I can move the mouse correctly. Okay, we'll say that, and we'll do it again. There we go. So it's more flat. So you can tell it's kind of a shutter effect type of thing. Let's go to our top view and grab each point here on the ends of the eyelids and rotate those, or move those to where they're more in the same angle as the actual eyelids. So like that. And then we'll grab the two guys, Control R, and rotate them. Well, I guess we'll have to do it one at a time, and rotate it to where it's even with the eyelid. There we go. And now finally, actually a little too far, I think. Supposed to be rotating around as normal, but it looks like it's... Oh, okay, I just had that one point selected, that's why. I need to select the whole bone. Oh, Control R is the way you twist it. Okay. Getting frazzled. Control R, select the whole thing. There we go. Okay, so now we got the eyelids. Let's go ahead and create a bone for the eyeball itself. Go to our side view, Shift A, drag that down. Actually, tell you what we can do is just Shift S and say selection to cursor. So it basically makes it invisible at this point because the start and end are at the exact same spot. But before you select anything else, we'll go hit G and then Y, move it out on the Y axis. So it makes it a perfectly straight bone that's pointing forward. So it'll match the same direction the eyeball itself is pointing. So we'll Control Alt S, make it a little bit skinnier. And there we go. So now we have the eyelids and the eyeball pointing the same direction. So that's pretty much all on the left side. So let's go ahead and select these two guys. Make sure we're in edit mode again. Put our 3D cursor right there in the middle. So we'll just go ahead and select that. Cursor to selected. Now select those. Kind of did like same thing we did on the arms and legs. Period button. So we're rotating around the 3D cursor. I think we already were. We'll go Shift D now to duplicate. Go and right click. SX-1. Boom. Go ahead and armature flip the names. Actually, we never did name them, did we? I guess we did that one. Yeah, we did. Okay. Like I said, I'm frazzled. We'll call this one I.R, and I don't think we named this one either, so I.L. Okay. So now we need to have these with the same rotation as these. So we'll select these guys, and X-axis mirrors turned on already, so Control R, pop those right into place. Okay, so before we go any further, we need to make sure that these are parented to the head bone. So we're going to shift select that layer, tab into edit mode, shift select the head, Control P, keep the offset. So now we rotate the head, the eyeballs, and everything follow suit. Okay, well this is certainly turning into a little bit longer section than I expected, but there's a little bit more we need to do before we can call it done, and that is to adjust some of the weights. So, and then we'll, like I said, we need to create some shape keys, but those won't take too long. But so we'll grab the head itself, and let's go to weight paint, and you can see that the head bone is pretty much moving everything it should, except I want it to move everything on the head, even the jawbone here. So let's tab into edit mode, and we'll select everything here that should be in the head, like so, and maybe there. And we'll go ahead and the head bone is already selected over here in the vertex group, so we're going to assign. Now there's a couple of things I don't want assigned to the head because I want them assigned to the eyelid bones, and that's obviously the eyelids themselves. So select one vertex on each one of these eyelids, like so. Control L, so they're all selected. Missed one on this guy. Control L. There we go. And now we're going to remove them from the head. Okay. Now we can do. Now you can see that everything except the eyelids are on there. So we rotate that around. It's still moving them, but because probably there's a little bit of influence there on the neck bone side. So we have the neck bone selected now, and I want to okay. It's probably getting confusing here. It's kind of getting confusing for me, but let's select the head bone. If I can find it in the list here, right there. Go ahead and select all the vertices in the head bone, and then I want to deselect these guys here on the neck. Bring my cursor down a little bit smaller. And then also, let's select, well, we haven't assigned them yet. So anyways, so we have all those selected. I don't want these particular vertices to be on the neck bone, so we're going to remove those. So we'll tab back out, and you can see now that the neck bone does not have any of those. It still has some on the eyelid. So tell you what, let's grab this eyelid here, Control L, and since the neck's still selected, I'll go ahead and remove that, but I want to assign it to the eyelid top right. So just go in here and say eyelid. Oops, I don't want to rename that one. Okay, one thing that you might run into is since we applied the armature to the rig before we added the eye bones and the chin and the cheeks and everything, it didn't get added as a vertex group. So now what we have to do is we select that bone and just put a little dot of selection there, and it automatically adds that. So let's just do that on each one of these new bones, right there, and here, there, and there. Okay. So now we got a little bit more work to do. Same thing here. Let's select the head bone like we did with the neck. Come up here and deselect everything first, and then we'll select the, where'd it go? Head. There we go. So select everything on the head bone, and then we'll come way down here for each of these lids and just remove all of these vertices from the lids because we don't want any of the vertices from the head on there. So we'll say remove, 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 and remove. Okay, so now we can select one of these vertices on the top. Control L, there we go, and say lid top right. Go ahead and assign all those to that. Same thing down here. Control L, lid bottom right, assign. Control L, there we go. Lid top right, assign. Control L, and lid bottom left. Did I say right before? I think I did. Lid top L, and then now lid bottom L, assign. So now when we tab out, you can see that that bone, control comma, so it's rotating correctly, is now controlling that whole lid without controlling anything on the head, and the head bone is not controlling those. But since they're attached, parented to the head bone, they are now following along. So now that's pretty much all of the weight painting we need to fix, unless there might be some differences down here on the body, but I'm not going to worry about that. We need to tell the eyeballs to follow along with the eyeball bones. So let's tab out of, or get out of edit mode. We'll go to object mode. Actually, that needs to be, I guess, pose mode. Okay, we still have the mesh selected. Okay. The eyeball, and then shift select the eye bone there, Control P, and we don't want to parent it to the armature. We want to just parent it to that particular bone individually. Same thing on this side, Control P to the bone. Okay, so now when we move the head around, everything follows along with it. Now, the rigging is pretty well done. Let's see, there's one other trick I like to do for the eyes, and that's to create a target for them to look at so you don't have to animate them individually. So let's just select both of these eye bones, go to our side view, Shift D, duplicate those, drag them out on the Y-axis, and then we'll just make them a little bit fatter. And we'll call this one, let's see, let's name them individually, I guess, there. Call that one look at.L, and then this guy look at.R. And then we can have the eyeballs pointing at these, but then I want to control these both at the same time. So I'm going to grab both of those, Shift S, cursor to selected, and we'll add one more bone. And let's drag this down to where it's kind of pointing the same direction as the look ats. Move that into place. A little bit bigger. A little bit bigger on the x-axis. And we'll just name this one look at. Okay. And then grab both of these guys. Shift P. Or shift select that one and then Control P. Keep the offset. So now when I move that around, the look at targets follow along with it. And then I select this left one and then select the left eye. Go Shift I. Add constraint. Now what I need to do, since that popped it up there, I just need to tell that chain length to have chain length of 1. Now we'll do the same thing on this side. Make sure you select the right ones. Shift select, there we go. Okay, Shift I, oops, Shift O. I hit Shift O, but I meant to hit Shift I. So Shift I, active bone, there we go. Same thing, chain length of 1. So now when we move the target around, the eyeballs follow along with it. So there we go. Okay, go ahead and save this guy. Almost done. There's a couple things we need to do still yet. And let's go ahead and turn off the layer with the rig on it for now. We'll grab the mesh here and start adding some shape keys. So let's add the first one, and that's going to be the basis. And that's going to be basically what all the other shape keys are based off of. That's the basis shape, the basis of the model. So you don't want to change that unless you're going to change it across the whole board. Excuse me. So let's add the first key. We'll call this one, let's start with the smile and frown. So we'll call this one smile.l. And we'll tab in here, and we'll grab the corner of his mouth and just kind of move it up to where it's a smile. Maybe rotate it just a little bit. Okay. And we'll tab out and run that up, the value up to 1.0. You can see he smiles. Yay. And we can also go into a negative range here, say negative 0.5, and you can see it puts the value, which is 0. Oops, microphone kind of shifted a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, puts the value 0 about right there. So that means we can go negative, and then he can frown. So let's make it a little bit further, say negative 1. So now that one shape key controls his smile and his frown. So there we go. Now, I want to have this exact same shape key on the other side. So we could go into, create another shape key and go in and try to make it look the exact same, but it may not look the exact same. So we want it the exact same. So what we can do now with smile.l at 1.0, 100%, we go click the black down arrow and say new shape from mix, and it's going to create a new shape that is based on all of the previous shapes before it. In this case, it's only the 1. So if I had another shape before that was also 1, it's going to mix those two shapes together for this third shape. But since we only have the 1 set at 1, it just doubled that basically. So if we run that one up to 100%, 1.0, it basically doubles the smile.l. But we don't want that, we want it over on the other side. So let's go ahead and rename it smile.r. And this time, we're going to click on this and say mirror shape key. So when we click that, run it up, you can see it's on the right side now. Now if we want that to also control the frown on the right side, go ahead and set this minimum to -1 as well. And then, boom, controls both, just like the left side does. So we'll go ahead and hit the X right there, and that'll zero each of those out. And I want to go in and have him close his mouth now. So we'll go ahead and create one more shape key, make sure all these are 0, and we'll say mouth closed. Okay, tab into edit mode, and grab all these vertices down here on his chin, and we'll put our 3D cursor about right there, about where his jaw hinge would be, and hit the period button, so we're rotating around it, and then just rotate. Actually, maybe it needs to be further up there. Kind of just click around until it gets about where you want it. Sometimes it's not where you might think. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and control comma, just rotate manually, and we'll just move it. Kind of keep an eye on the borders of your selection. Right now, it had the base of the neck moving, and I don't want that, so just make sure you're not going too far with your fall off there. So just move that up until the bottom lip meets the top lip, like so. Then we'll zoom in here and grab these guys here. Now, one thing you might notice, since we have the mirror turned off, we're kind of having to do these each side individually, but since I want, on the mouth closed, I want both sides to be closed at the same time on the same shape key. I have to edit both sides at the same time. Now, the way I can do that is you know, okay, here's the problem. If we have proportional editing turned on and we select one, it's not going to copy to the other side, even if this X mirror is checked. You can see it's kind of grayed out. See, it's not going to copy over. So if we turn it off, oops, disable it, you can see now it controls both sides. But with it turned on, it doesn't. So there's a way around that, though. And like I said, we can just select both sides at the same time. And then we move it, and it selects both sides. Now, that's only handy for moving it up and down, and then on your side view, moving it to and fro. It doesn't work if you try to move it left and right. But there's a way around that too. We can scale, just instead of moving it, we'll just scale it. Just select those single vertices and just scale them on the X and Y axis. And then that'll be the same thing as moving them towards the middle. So just do that, and then come to our side view, and let's go ahead and close up the lips here on the sides. Just select both sides at the same time by using the select paint. Okay. And now, if we tab out into object mode and run that mouth closed value all the way up to 1, you can see he closes his mouth. And then if we say smile on the left and right, boom, he smiles on the left and right. So there we go. Okay, so that's going to be it, I think, for the shape keys. We're running out of time here. It's really dragging on. Apologize for that. But, you know, you can add more shape keys if you like. You can make him, you know, have his tongue wiggle or something or whatever. But for now, we're just going to create these. And now we'll turn on the bone layer. And let's grab our rig there and just turn on the layer that has the facial bones on it, like so. And now I want these facial bones to control the shape keys. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear all the numbers out there. And now I'm going to right click on the number itself and say add a driver. And that makes it purple. And then if you come over here and split this window up and go to our graph editor and then come over here, it says curve editor, change that to drivers. And now we can control, if we hit that plus sign there, control the properties of that shape key. Running out of space here in my window, so let me hit N to clear out the properties panel, and then T to clear out the toolbox. And we'll expand that key and say now we have the where we added this driver to the smile.L shape key. We're under keys here. Value smile.L now has a driver added to it. Now we need to define the driver, and we need to tell it the type needs to be averaged value. And it has an error right there, but don't worry about that right now. That'll go away shortly. Because we need to come down here and tell it which object is going to be controlling that, and we click in here and say it's going to be armature. I thought I renamed that to turtle armature, but I guess not. And now we'll say FC mouth, or let's see, smile.L. Yeah, it's going to be mouth.L. So right now it's going to the X location, which is going to be the left and right location. So I want it to be the up and down, which will be I believe the Z location. So if I grab that, move it, okay. Yeah, it's moving it, but we need to change the numbers. So let's change this to, I think if we change that to local space, it'll work a little bit better. You have to really drag it. Okay, if I change it to local, it's going the to and fro rather than the up and down. So let's change it to Y location. So now, there we go. A lot of trial and error sometimes on these types of things. But I want it to, right now you have to drag it way up high or way down low to get the full effect of the smile frown. So let's change that to where we don't have to drag it so far. And right now it's 1.0. If we make it, say, let's make it 5. If we drag it up, you can see it behaves a lot faster. So there we go. That's what we want. So let's copy this driver over to the other side. So just right click on there, say copy driver, and then come down to the numbers on the smile.R and say paste driver. And you know, while we're at it, let's go ahead and do it on the mouth closed too. Go ahead and paste that driver on there. Now we'll come back over here and click, and it immediately repopulates with the new drivers. So select smile.R and change its control bone to mouth.R, fcmouth.R, rather than fcmouth.L, which it already was. Okay, there we go. And then we'll do the same thing on the mouth closed. We'll use the FC chin. And there we go. Okay, so now we grab that bone there. It controls the right cheek. That controls the left cheek. And this controls the mouth open and close. So say we want to close his mouth and have him frown when he's sad. There you go. Pretty simple. Okay. So I think after this long tutorial, we now have him pretty well rigged up, ready to animate and maybe even say a few words or something. So you can blink, you know, whatever. So we'll clear everything out, and we'll go ahead and save. And that's going to be it for part 6. Again, I apologize for the lengthiness of this one, but I think we covered a lot of good stuff. So, anyways, okay, yes, that's going to be all of it for part 6. Part 7, I think, should be the final one. We'll get in and just do a basic walk cycle, and like I said, maybe do some lip syncing, have him say something while he's walking. So, thank you for watching this whole thing. I apologize for the long length of it, but we're done now. I'll see you in part 7.